Hello friends, we got the Cane Creek Kitsuma Air Shock on review today. First impressions of this shock, it's got quite an interesting finish. Well, mostly because this shock's off Facebook Marketplace, so no special marketing video here. You're gonna get the real deal. The graphics located on the Cane Creek Kitsuma are heat transferred on, so you're 100% stuck with all the logos on this shock for an eternity. And I hope you like yellow because this stuff does not rub off. The compression and rebound adjusters are located centrally on the upper head of the shock, and it's pretty unique in the sense that you need no tools to make all the adjustments on this shock, one of the big selling points. Adjusting the rebound and compression is a little bit interesting. Since you do not need any tools, you use your hand and it doesn't feel quite as precise. This could be because I'm using my hand and not a tool, so I'm not going to hold it against it. I do like that it says slower and faster and everything is labeled, so there's no confusion. As the last video I made a huge typo on the EXT shock because the stuff is not labeled, so 1 point for Cane Creek on this. The shock features a massive climb switch on the side, so it'll be very easy to lock it out in case you were riding this on your Amish bike. Cane Creek does not offer a big burly fork to match the capabilities of this shock. Since most people will be familiar with the X2 since it comes on a lot of bikes, let's take a look. First impression, the Kitsuma is a lot larger than the X2. The Kitsuma is much more in line with the RockShox Vivid as far as size goes. Everything about the Kitsuma reminds me of the Vivid, so essentially RockShox borrowed quite a few things from Cane Creek on this shock since the Kitsuma's been around for quite some time. Now holding the X2 in my hand and holding the Kitsuma in my hand, the Kitsuma feels a lot heavier, but perception isn't everything. Let's weigh these two shocks. The Kitsuma comes in about 1 pound 6 ounces, and the Fox Float X2 comes in about 1 pound 8 ounces. So the Cane Creek being a larger shock that's lighter points towards having higher quality aluminum as far as the construction goes. Now all the weight in the Kitsuma shock is in the head of the shock because all the adjusters are located right there. So weight distribution of the shock is a little bit oblonged. Now when we compare these two shocks in my hand, we can see how much larger the Cane Creek Kitsuma shock is, and that massive body can have issues as far as interference on frames, so keep in mind. Now let's measure these two stanchions. So the Cane Creek Kitsuma comes in at 34 millimeters and the Fox Float X2 is 31.5. So once again, the Kitsuma is almost identical to the RockShox Vivid. Now this is going to be a Cane Creek Kitsuma video, and I'm not going to compare them back to back on the trail, but I'm going to tell you how the Kitsuma rides, and you can check out my other 80 Fox videos. Since we don't want this Kitsuma sounding like a Fox Float X2, I'm going to check the pressure within the piggyback and make sure it's full. Supposedly when these piggybacks get low on air pressure, that's what helps air get into the oil. After checking the piggyback for the proper air pressure and deflating a little bit, you don't want to have too much pressure in there, it'll make your ride too harsh. We are going to check how many tokens are within this shock. To remove the outer air canister to reveal the tokens, you have to remove an O-ring on the bottom part of the canister, and you're going to slide that down with all your might. It may be stuck because Cane Creek uses these oversized blue O-rings that become very stuck. The tokens within the Kitsuma are the same as the double barrel. Basically, you're going to use a pair of scissors and choose how many tokens you want to use by cutting it off. It's kind of like homemade cookies. It's not super precise, but it does the job. Now we're going to put this Kitsuma on the bike, on my Kenevo, and it's probably going to whack the frame, but that's no big deal because this bike's been through a lot. So the finish of the Cane Creek Kitsuma is very prone to catching fingerprints because of the finish. It's always going to look dirty unless you wipe it off with a rag constantly. So it's time to go ride the Cane Creek Kitsuma, and it's a beautiful winter day with no shadow, so the lighting should be pretty good for the little action cameras. So my first impression on the Cane Creek Kitsuma, it's a super lively, bigger shock. It does not feel like a coil shock. It feels very poppy and lively like an air shock, like a much smaller air shock actually. And let me tell you, it's got all the small bump sensitivity for your cross country transfer stages. Basically, not too many complaints so far. There's a little bit of a higher speed jump line ahead, so let's see how she goes. So not the best jumping shock I've ever rode by a long shot, but I haven't fully tuned it up, so let's pull over and make a couple adjustments. The rebound definitely felt too fast because the shock's so poppy and lively, so I'm going to crank the rebound slower, add a little compression, and see how she goes. So let me tell you, jumping off your bike in 2 seconds and making a shock adjustment with no tools is freaking amazing. Now that was definitely a move in the right direction, but this shock is pretty linear. Linear meaning it likes to blow through all its travel, so you're going to need to use tokens or high-speed compression to control your bottom out. So the Cane Creek Kitsuma has awesome small bump sensitivity. Almost as good as a coil. As I'm climbing this little fire road, it's absorbing all the terrain and not transferring it into my body like a smaller duty air shock. So the Cane Creek Kitsuma on blue flow trails is so lively and so poppy. You can just push into the travel and get rapid pop out of it. It definitely moves quicker than a Fox Float X2 from my perception on my big 180mm travel e-bike. And when it comes to the small bump sensitivity, it is far superior to the 2024 Fox Float X2 and equal to the older Fox Float X2 as far as small bump sensitivity. So after that ride, I realized the Cane Creek Kitsuma is essentially the same shock as the Cane Creek double barrel. As you can see, they're virtually identical. The double barrel is just a little bit smaller. Okay, since it's essentially a Cane Creek double barrel with a couple essential upgrades, this is how you make this trail or this shock feel super good on the trail. You're gonna run the stupidest, slowest rebound you've ever heard of. Basically dead slow, add some compression, and the shock is absolutely gonna rip. But I gotta put my theory to the test, so let's hit it. With virtually the same settings as my Cane Creek double barrel, the Kitsuma was just absolutely ripping. Dead slow rebound with a ton of compression at it. I was like, yes. But of course you gotta tinker with it just a little bit more to get it absolutely dialed. Now the Cane Creek Kitsuma is more function than form. It's not the prettiest tool in the shed, but it's absolutely the easiest 4-way adjustable shock I've ever used. Firmer, softer, everything's adjustable by hand. The shock's super lively and poppy. Reading the tech documents from Cane Creek, it's got a lot of technology built in, like a soft IFP to give superior small bump sensitivity, and let me tell you, that's not just marketing. The small bump out of this shock is outstanding. Reading through the service manual, they did a lot of things to make this service friendly, so it's not too difficult to service. The Cane Creek double barrel and the Kitsuma are virtually identical. The Kitsuma's just a solid upgrade, so click the video on the screen to see what the double barrel's all about at the bike park.